What's up, everybody? Mike Pugh here, giving you my thoughts on the Tokon beta that just passed a couple weeks ago by the time of this recording. Sorry it took so long. As you can tell, this is going to be an audio-only recording. Just want to give my thoughts on the game, and I have plenty of thoughts. Took a minute to finally regroup and really think about how I want to approach this conversation. First things first, the honeymoon phase is over. I am no longer coming at this with rosy colored glasses. I'm going to be a bit more critical and honest on what needs to change and what needs to transpire to make this a game worth picking up when it releases sometime in 2026. The Game Awards came and went. That was part of the reason for the delay. I was hoping that we would get some new announcements, but alas, we did not. We did get a new reveal of Caitlyn for 2XKO. Excited for that coming out on console next month. I'll be touching on that game a little bit more in a minute. But no, we did not get any new character trailer, which there has not been a character trailer for almost 6 months by the time of this recording. Crazy work. Everyone is very concerned. And this time around, there's a lot of concerns from the previous beta. Auto combos being too strong, too prevalent, very much took over the gameplay functionality where, press one button too many times, you get a full combo and do that by accident. You would be trying to do a manual string and accidentally press a button too many times, and now you're going down another combo route. Not just that, but also auto combos were very powerful, very strong, decent damage. So from an initial gameplay standpoint, why would you not use auto combos? The assist system did not play the way people thought it would. Definitely not the way I had predicted. Did work the way we thought it would in neutral, but when you were in the midst of a combo string, that's not how it worked. You would end up doing a combo extension, which was great to be able to create your combos, right? But when it came to variety, when it came to what you would expect to happen, when you called your, whether it be a shooter, vertical, or assault assist, they weren't doing those motions mid-combo. They would instead just do a generic combo extension, which even though the animation would vary sometimes from character to character, they all had the same functionality. They all allowed you to OTG after doing a ground spike and continue your, combos on the ground. And it's a great introduction to doing combos and to get them extended and to do more damage and to utilize your team. But unfortunately, when it came to the realm of adding variety, after a while, it just got very boring to see characters do the same thing over and over and over again. In all honesty, I don't blame people for being upset. I don't blame people for wanting something better, something more, something interesting. And it's quickly started to become a tough sell for the average player to want to play this game for a long period of time or to even watch it. Quickly, you would turn on a tournament and, Star-Lord was doing some crazy work. But for the most part, it got very samey, very much predictable very quickly. And it didn't take long towards the end of the first weekend for the first beta for you to see people utilize and do all the same kind of stuff. So when it came to the second beta, yeah, people from the jump were more familiar, and yeah, you just saw more of the same. Things didn't really change. But, we're going to unpack and dive into this system a bit more in a minute to talk about how to improve it. And the other thing problematic with the gameplay was tagging. Tagging was not responsive in the first beta. You would call an assist. You would think you could tag to that character, but if you were doing something in the middle of an action, you weren't able to tag. They remained grayed out. And you basically had to wait until your assist wasn't doing anything, you were doing nothing, and then you can press the tag button, which was just pressing the symbol again after you call this symbol to call them out as an assist. You call a symbol again, and you tag to that character. So they claimed it was a bug and that they fixed it, and they did. Unfortunately, we suffered an overcorrection. I don't think I noticed many people calling this out, but they did fix the bug, apparently, for the Tokyo Game Show build, which was a playable demo they had at an event in Tokyo in September. But they said that players at the booth were having an issue of accidentally tagging too many times. Due to the aforementioned auto combo system, you were very much encouraged to keep mashing on the same button. So you'll keep mashing on light to do a full combo. If you had your whole team available, you would cycle through your whole team to finish your combo. If you're mashing on medium, you'll do a full combo into super skill, which is the games would be a level 1 super. And if you mash on heavy all the way to the end, you would combo into your ultimate skill, which would be your level 3. And even though that's nice and dandy, you basically train the player to just keep mashing the same button. So when they were calling assists, they would just, call assist, press the button again, tag to that character. And then accidentally, like, apparently there were a lot of players who were calling assist again, and they would end up getting another character. And sometimes even so, huge problem, people mashing too much. So they had one great solution, which is you call assist one, and then you double tap a summon button again to then tag. Fantastic solution, worked great. I was doing that most of the time. But when I heard that they now added a tag button, I thought, oh, amazing. That's going to work great. Let me try it out. And then I realized, like, oh, that's right. There is a third way to tag, and that's to hold the assemble button, and then you will eventually swap and switch to that character. And what a lot of us didn't realize, initial statement went out about, oh, now you have to hold to tag, was how that would affect the rest of the gameplay. And now, instead of tapping to tag being the main way you would switch, it was now hold to tag became the main way to tag between your characters. And that proved to be very sluggish, felt terrible, and made the game feel slow and unresponsive. Lo and behold, when I press the tag button, great shortcut, let's just see how this works. Here I am expecting to immediately switch to my character, to instead find that it was the same length as if I was holding the tag button to switch. So it was not responsive, it was not immediate, and I proceeded to never press that button again. I tried it once, saw I didn't like it, didn't care for it, didn't press it again. So that is definitely something that can easily be fixed and improved. I do like the idea of holding the assemble button to tag for situations when I call and assist, and then I wish to tag to said assist character as soon as they're done performing their move. That was great, great functionality. I do want them to keep it, but the primary tag function, when you're pressing double tap to tag or pressing the tag button, it should be an immediate swap out. They should be swapping back and forth just as fast as they do when you begin a round. You can cycle between which character you want to start with, and it's very quick when the way they switch in and out, and that should be the how quick and immediate it should be when I press double tap to tag or the tag button, which is the shortcut. And I know part of the reason they did this, they like the simplicity. In the beta one, it was press assemble to tag, and then you build for the second beta, it was then replaced with the prompt hold assemble to tag. And I know replacing that with double tap assemble to tag is a little clunky, but I think moving forward, and I saw this in another video where someone actually switched up their control scheme to on their face buttons to be light, medium, heavy, and instead of the assemble button, they switched that to a shoulder button. And instead, I'm assuming that the unique button became a face button. And looking at that, I'm thinking, well, that looked pretty cool, pretty great if the front bumpers or R1, L1 on PlayStation, if you switch R1 to being your assist, and then you make L1 the tag button. And even though it's going to be a little clunky, and we're going to get a bunch of complaints about too many buttons on the controller, I think that'll be a great change to then maybe move those buttons around, and then you can offer on your shoulder buttons, boom, one button's for assist, one button's for tag, and you change that now to your prompts for the tutorial instructions, where instead of saying double tag is a primary method, hey, you press the assist button, your assist character comes out, and now you press the tag button, now you switch to that character. I think moving forward, if they have that language and that mindset, I know this addition of a tag button was something new that they just put into the game, that they're just trying out. But I honestly think moving forward, that's the way to go. Tag was pretty straightforward. They did it right, and then they overcorrected just because the average player, person walking up to the queue, picking up the controller, wasn't understanding it right away. That's why they did another correction that was unnecessary. I think if we all had played the Tokyo Game Show build of the game as the second beta, it would have been a much better experience overall, and we would have fewer complaints. Auto combos are still an issue, assists are still an issue, but they did try to remedy auto combos for the second beta by letting it slip out there. Hey, if you hold back, it removes the auto combo function of the button. So if you keep pressing on light, it's just going to do the light attack. Most characters is a standing jab. Medium, same thing. Heavy, the same thing. But holding back is not something that people were accustomed to doing. It wasn't really advertised that much. So almost nobody used that functionality. Everyone's still complaining that auto combos are still running rampant and should be disabled. But there is a method that's put in the game that negates auto combos from triggering. So hopefully they do a better job of advertising that. And moving forward, that is a method that players start integrating into the game plan so that auto combos stop being part of the conversation. Sure, the damage could probably be nerfed. Maybe they can also have increased scaling if you have auto combos, but I do like the adjustment that you get from doing auto combos in the air. That's something that was present in Dragon Ball Fighters. For some reason, people keep saying that it wasn't. It was. It's just in this game, there seems to be, yes, even though characters are floaty, there also seems to be a little bit more misalignment that happens in the air. Dragon Ball Fighters, it wasn't as obvious. In this game, it's very apparent. And I think that's why people keep highlighting the teleport that happens when you do an auto combo in the air. But it definitely was a method that was used in Dragon Ball Fighters to do interesting combo extensions in the air. All right, so circling back to assists. Ooh, I did see a video by Shin Kensou that was pretty good. Check it out. I had a link to it in the description. I thought he did a great job of explaining the main issue with assists. Everybody, I think, picking up playing the game, we all thought assists were going to work the same way. When we first saw the trailer, I think I was like one of the few eagle eye that did catch, like, wait, I think all the characters are doing multiple assists. And that had me very excited because all the potential, all the different mix ups and different combo extensions you can do if you have all these different assists per character. And when we find out that there's different roles, shooter, vertical, assault, we thought, okay, that helps clear things up. It's interesting that as characters rotate, different characters take on those roles based on the spot that they're in. We all thought that they would remain consistent, shooter, vertical, and assault. But when we saw the air assist, I thought that was really interesting, really cool. There's different assists that you call while you're in the air. I actually thought that was a cool idea. You want something new and different, and then you get new and different, people want to complain about it. When it came to the assists, the grounded assists and neutral are fine. Interesting, right? A shooter has a long range move, vertical, anti air, and then assault is unique based on the character. First two are kind of generic, while the last one gives you something different. Every character is going to offer you something unique to them. And that's going to help switch up the meta, make it interesting. 4v4, let's see where that can go. But as we discussed with the combo extensions, in the middle of a combo, when you call out that character, they actually just perform a combo extension. Doesn't matter the role. They just do the same thing. And then you have to get into these weird situations of freeze states, of hard knockdowns, and then quickly calling an assist in neutral, and then continue your combo. So you had to get very creative with how to utilize those unique assist roles of a shooter, vertical, and assault. Even though that may be interesting to eventually discover what that is, that's going to take work. That's going to take you to reach an intermediate or advanced level in order to be able to utilize those techniques and use them the way you want to in the middle of a combo. And everyone's in agreement. That's not how we want it to work. But unfortunately, what a lot of us were hoping that they would do was maybe you can keep the neutral assemble press mid combo as the extension, but then forward would give you a shooter, down would give you a vertical, and then back would give you an assault. So it would just homogenize the buttons and what they do. Doesn't matter if you're on the ground, in neutral, in the middle combo string, or potentially, some would argue also in the air. But personally, I do like the idea of the air assist. I think that's really cool. That's different. But I will have to admit that all the air assists essentially look like shooter assists. They all do long range attacks. Some do beam attacks, some do fire projectiles. Spider-Man or Miss Marvel would send like an attack that would grab you from full screen or allow them to zip towards you full screen. That's interesting for an air shooter assist. But when you really think about it, a vertical assist is naturally by design an anti-air assist. It's meant to attack opponents who are airborne. So to be honest, that should remain the same. And assault assist, some of them also attack from the air. You have Doom that does his satellite beam, the replacement for his hidden missiles. You have Star-Lord lob a mine midair, like a grenade, and that would have an arc that would catch people who were jumping in on him. And you had Storm that had a great potential, right? She does that gust of wind that pulls the opponent towards you, and then she plants a tornado on the floor. So if an opponent was jumping at towards you, you can call that assist maybe, and then they would be pushed towards you, and then Storm plants that tornado on the bottom, and then you could switch to her if the opponent gets caught, or if they manage to stand back, You can switch the storm, do another gust of wind towards the opponent, and catch them as they're landing, and then you could go in for a full combo. Really cool, interesting stuff. Ghost Rider has this amazing flame carpet that's great to call, like you're jumping at each other, and then Ghost Rider calls a flame carpet, and then your opponent doesn't realize it, and they land on the flame carpet. Such great, amazing mix-up tools and opportunities that this is the kind of stuff people want when they play a game where it's a team-based fighting game where you have assists and you can do tags. People want to have the dirty stuff. They want to have the mix-ups. They want to go for nasty cross-ups. That's what's fun and exciting about those games. But Arxis had this huge mountain to climb when it comes to them deciding, you know what, we're going to go 4v4. And everyone thought it was going to be the most crazy, broken, obscene thing you've ever experienced. And it's not. They made something that's very controlled. But at the same time, there's a lot of guardrails. There's a lot of constraints as to when you can and can't do things. And there's restraints on when you can call assists. So if you throw out a move and it whiffs, you're not able to call assists at that time. You can only call assists during block string pressure or in the middle of combos or while you're in neutral. Before you press a button, you always have to call an assist. So if you want to do a grounded assist, you have to call a grounded assist, jump in the air, and then going for the mix-up. But in that approach, your opponent's going to very easily be able to block it all. They're going to see it coming a mile away and be prepared. So unfortunately, they create a game that feels very friendly for casual players, but is very frustrating for more advanced fighting game players because there's so many controls and constraints and rules as to when and when you can't do things. And it feels like very much so you have to learn what all these rules are before you can really enjoy playing the game. And here comes the big one. Unfortunately, in the midst of the second beta, right, where a lot of us were excited to get to play Ghost Rider and Spider-Man for the first time, we're going to be dropping little command list videos for y'all to check out, like we did with the previous roster. But going into this game, there was actually competition. First beta came out, kind of sucked the wind out of the sails for the closed beta launching for 2XKO, but that game's still doing well. It's finding its audience. It's got a great tournament scene. I'm more than excited to be playing and covering that game when it drops on console next month in January. But what was going against 2XKO at the time was the fact that people felt like the game was overdue. It should have been out. So there was less momentum going into that closed beta for 2XKO at the time. And most players were excited. We got the initial announcement of Marvel Tokon at State of Play. They had playable build on the floor at EVO. And then next thing you know, at EVO, they announced first closed beta. So there was so much momentum, so much wind blowing behind Marvel Tokon sales that it's like this game's too big to fail. This is the must-play game of 2026. And 2XKO at the time felt like an afterthought. So of course, when both betas were so close to each other, Marvel Tokon was that weekend, and then the following Tuesday, 2XKO closed beta started. But still, the talk and what was everyone's mind was Marvel Tokon. But after playing the beta, I was riding high. That was the first time I finally got to get my hands on the game. So I gave it a glowing review. I had nothing but positive, great things to say about the game at the time. But now things have changed. Honeymoon period's over. And now we're looking at all the problems the game still has and have persisted. So going into this closed beta, the second one, even though it's exciting to hear that announcement at Tokyo Game Show, to see initial gameplay of Ghost Rider and Spider-Man, and to know that now we're finally going to play those characters and finally play the complete 8 characters that were announced in that initial announcement trailer. Unfortunately, there's a new game that just came out of nowhere that really initially had a lot of negative views. Some people said it looked like a Flash game. Some people thought it didn't properly represent the franchise that it was based off of. But, we had this Avatar Legends, the fighting game, released a closed alpha build in that same weekend. That was announced. And then Marvel Tokon Beta was announced for that same weekend. But more people were curious and wanted to try out this new Avatar game. And it looks crazy. I also tried to sign up for the closed alpha. I didn't get invited, unfortunately, but I cannot wait for the fact that as soon as it ended, they said, hey, we have another closed alpha test coming out. Even more people get to participate, join in on the fun. Hope to be invited to that. And I get to play the hell out of it like everyone did this past weekend, where people had a choice. Do they play a new fighting game, which is unknown, looks promising, but we don't know? Or do we still go back and try to see if Marvel Tokon fix any of the complaints people had initially and had any plans to move forward? in a positive way. And unfortunately, Avatar, as I mentioned, you have one game with a lot of guardrails, a lot of restraints and constrictions on how you're supposed to play the game. And another game, Avatar Legends, where it's just an open sandbox where they kind of brought back a type of variation system a la MKX, where you have different ways of modifying your character based on your personal play style. Do you want to be more rushdown heavy? Do you want to be more mobile and tricky with your movement? Do you want to have access to more cancels? Do you want to like, empower your avatar states in any way? So many options, so many ways to play the game, and characters that felt very responsive, fast gameplay, very much you think it, you can do it, as opposed to Marvel Tokon, it's like, well, okay, this is what I want to do. How do I work within the system? And something Sonic Fox would probably say how to break and cheat the system in order to actually kind of do the stuff that you would like to do. Avatar game felt like a return to form. First 2D fighter we've seen in a very long time. In my mind, very much accurately recreates the look of the animation from Nickelodeon. And, with the momentum of that game and potentially a release of a, feature film of Grown Up Aang next fall, it's like 1-2 punch, perfect storm situation, as opposed to Marvel, where it's, we got Doomsday coming out. There's thoughts and opinions on that. I won't say them right at the moment, but we shall see how that turns out. And then we have this game, which initially had so much promise, had so much interest behind it with that initial announcement. But the more time people spend with the game, the more they play it, the more concerns they have. Let's talk about one of those announcements and concerns that were not eased by that Tokyo Game Show trailer for the second beta, and that is the X-Men stage. Now, when they hyped this thing up, I was excited. I wanted to play on the stage, see what it's all about. Everyone was curious because it's going to be one of the only stages without stage transitions, which has been a heavy contention for this game. I don't mind them. They're faster than Strive, and there's functionality behind it more than just gaining a buff and meter, you getting extra character. Even though myself personally, I actually liked rocking two characters. I'm a very simple guy. It takes me a while to learn things. As you can tell in this gameplay that's playing in the background, yeah, I ain't the best player out there. I'm very much a casual fighting game player, even though I love to play everything fighting game related. I'm a very casual, low level. I'm not signing for any tournaments. Let's just say that. But yeah, that X-Men stage did disappoint for me to a certain degree. One of the biggest contentions is X-Men characters. Now, I know people gave us a little hell in the comments talking about all you guys want are X-Men. Well, man, we're kids of the 90s, bro. We love our X-Men characters and we want to see them in there. I'm a heavy Rogue Gambit stan, rocking those heavily in Rivals at the moment. But seeing them in that stage, along with Iceman, Nightcrawler, which is heavily requested from us as well. Professor X, I think the man can stay in the chair a bit longer. It's all good. Beast, Angel, and the biggest stab in the heart, my girl Psylocke was just chilling in that background. And we all thought to ourselves, man, I don't know. I don't know, fam. This is a lot. This is a heavy pill to swallow to see all those characters in the background. I know a lot of people like to highlight the fact that, but when Storm's not selectable on the other team, she shows up in the background. Like, yeah, man. Zoom in, look really close, really tight. That's a sprite. That's a low res, low file size sprite in the background that you could easily toggle on and off. That don't say much to me. Just like how I feel as though, there's a reason why we see Matt Murdock in the background of the New York stage, the first stage that we saw for the game. I do think we'll get Daredevil. My money's on it being DLC. And I think that's where we're going to see the functionality of them toggling off 3D characters from the background. I think that will be a function that shows up, that will be present. I just don't see that at launch being a thing. But I do think we're going to see that in the near future. In terms of predictions for the roster, there are some key characters that we did not see in that lineup. We did not see Wolverine, Cyclops, or Jean Grey, and other characters that people are kind of wanting thanks to Rivals being such a huge success. People want their Magic, their Emma Frost, their Scarlet Witch. I think there's a lot of interesting potential on the game board for that. I'm going to pretend like Marvel Superheroes Contest of Champions isn't a thing, even though I did play a fair share of that. I'm just going to say that, just ignore that game in terms of potential characters we can see show up in the roster. I think Magic's a high possibility. I still think Luna Snow is high up on the list. It will be fantastic and amazing if we see Wolverine and Cyclops. Cyclops being the leader of the X-Men is such a disrespect. Thankfully, X-Men 97, you know, brought some justice to my man, Scott Summers' name, and really excited about that. Of course, characters like Cable, Bishop, I think those are far off in the future DLC characters. I do see characters on that stage making it into the game in the future because they really want this game to be played. They said for a decade, and I believe them. But I really do think that they need to make the tough call and fix the assist system. I know that's going to take some work because you could tell there's so much programming to make it work the way it currently does, but they got to figure out another input for doing combo extensions with the assist that's easy to do. But I think forward plus assemble should always be shooter, down plus assemble should always be vertical, back plus assemble should always be assault. No matter where you're on the ground, in the air, in the middle of a combo, even if they slightly change the functionality of how that move kind of works in those situations, that's also okay. For balancing purposes, I know they're trying really hard not to have this 4v4 be super busted and crazy and broken. I know the expectation is that it would be, and that the belief was that they would kind of double back and then nerf things and mend stuff. But I think this game has been cooking in the kitchen for so long that I think it's a little bit overdone. And they got to kind of ease back and let go of some of the restrictions. Like Shin Kensou, I'm going to go back to his take on it because he was highlighting the fact that ArcSys has had a habit of late of fixing the games and making the game eventually be the game that we want, but years into the game's lifespan. But I think a lot of people have had enough of that. And so many people want this game to be good day one. And now, thanks to Avatar Legends and 2XKO being on a solid run, I think there's so much legit competition now that my closing thoughts are I don't want to see a closed beta announced in a month or two. I want a closed beta late spring, early summer. Hopefully, this game gets delayed into even 2027 if it's really going to be what people want it to be day one. I know they put a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears into this game. I really want this game to do well and be successful. We all miss Marvel. And I do think that they have a chance to make something great, something really fun and exciting. But there's real competition now. We're in a golden age of fighting games where Street Fighter is still doing really well, Tekken's doing really well, Mortal Kombat's over and done with, sadly. But City of the Wolves, it's getting a ton of support. It's not going away, even though the sales aren't what people, well, at least what they were hoping they would be. There's still a ton of support, and it's going to get years to come for that game. And then we're going to get new introductions of Incredible Versus. I'm not going to bother with that game. I'm one of the few people who's not a fan, oddly enough, of that franchise. So I'm not going to be rocking that game, but I know other people who will be. But 2XKO, super hyped to play that game next year. See the Wolves, I'm going to try to figure out a little bit, but those cancels are crazy. But I'll see how far I can get with it. I still love my Tekken. I'll still get some more love to Street Fighter 6. And yeah, those games are going really strong. And then you got more introductions with Avatar Legends. And who knows who else is going to be coming out the woodwork next year and make some surprises. Crumble Versus made a super speed run, got announced after Marvel Tokon, and it's already be coming out in April with a roster of 18. So that's another big contention for the game of Marvel Tokon. This game cannot be releasing with the roster less than that. Thankfully, as I'll probably be posting right here, the team at Marvel Tokon ArcSys did comment, did acknowledge the feedback. I went in, give my essay responses. I very much encourage other people to do the same. They're going to be making adjustments. They're going to be announcing a bunch of characters. Hopefully, it's 20 something characters at the bare minimum. At least on the same level as Dragon Ball FighterZ in terms of roster size. But yeah, be sure to stay tuned. Moving forward, I'm going to be covering games solely on my game channel, EZPEEZY Gaming. Going to be doing some housekeeping over the holidays, dumping all my Mortal Kombat content and solely be focusing on 2XKO, all the Marvel Tokon stuff. Got to keep nice and tidy for the kids. No more violent content on there. And yeah, this is going to be debuting on State of the Industry first, but then we'll be migrating permanently on my gaming channel. So be sure to like, subscribe, check this out on here. Continue to support what we do on State of the Industry. And also be sure to check out my EZPeezy Gaming channel where I'm going to give you more thoughts and insights on games. And we're going to be doing a whole deep dive on everything 2SKO, from the lore, from League, all the way to the game. Of course, we're going to be covering Arcane as well, and maybe even do some reactions on that. We'll see some breakdowns, some insights on behind the scenes that people might not know about. Anyway, much appreciate anybody who actually checked this video out, listened to it, and actually managed to sit through my crappy gameplay. Again, apologies. I ain't a pro, but I love gaming. I love being a part of this. So sure, stay tuned and keep it locked. And thanks for tuning in. All right, everybody. Peace.
負けんなよ